Have you ever sat in a meeting and suddenly realized you have absolutely no idea what anyone is actually saying?
Oh, yeah. Like constantly.
Right. I mean, you sit down in this brightly lit conference room, or maybe you're just staring at a grid of faces on a video call. The audio is perfectly clear, everyone is speaking English, and yet you're just swimming in this sea of bizarre metaphors and mechanical buzzwords.
And vague action items.
Vague action items. And you're just nodding along, praying nobody asks for your input.
It's honestly a profound paradox of modern work. I mean, we have more tools for communication right now than at any point in human history, yet we spend half our day just deciphering what our colleagues actually mean.
That exact paradox is what we are decoding in today's deep dive. We're looking at a highly specialized set of materials today. It's a transcript and a vocabulary guide from an audio program called Podzone.
Which is a fantastic resource, by the way.
It really is. And what's interesting about this source is that it's designed specifically for C2 level English proficiency. For anyone listening who might be unfamiliar with that grading scale, C2 is, well, it's the absolute summit.
Yeah, it's the top tier.
Right. It implies a mastery of the language that is so complete you can navigate the most complex, subtle, and culturally nuanced situations effortlessly.
Because it goes far beyond just, knowing the grammar. It's about understanding the unwritten rules of the language.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this by starting with the most obvious and unavoidable barrier to clear communication. Spoken jargon.
Oh, the jargon.
Our mission today is to decode the subtext of this office speak. We want to figure out the psychological reasons why this jargon exists, why our inboxes are basically passive-aggressive battlegrounds, and how you can actually master these nuances to become an unequivocally effective communicator.
It's a great mission. And spoken jargon is definitely the perfect entry point, because to understand corporate speak, we first have to, examine the root motivation.
Right, like why do we do it?
Exactly. Why do otherwise intelligent people use these convoluted phrases in meetings instead of just speaking plainly to one another?
Well, the source material highlights some of the greatest hits. And I mean, we hear them constantly. People talking about their bandwidth as if they are, I don't know, fiber optic cables instead of human beings who are just tired.
Yeah, I don't have the bandwidth for that.
Right. Or people asking to take this offline, which always strikes me as absurd, since we are usually sitting in a physical offline room when they say it.
It's so true.
Or the absolute classic, suggesting the team needs to leverage synergies.
Oh, it borders on the theatrical, really. The source material actually shares this brilliant anecdote about a colleague in what they call a cross-functional alignment meeting, which, by the way, is itself a heavily armored phrase.
Although completely.
So this colleague stands up and unironically says, let's run this up the flagpole and see who salutes.
I just picture a guy in a sterile, beige office park somewhere, wearing a fleece vest, talking about flagpoles, and nobody is saluting.
Not a single person.
It feels like a secret club's handshake. When you're on the outside, it looks completely ridiculous. But when you're on the inside and you know the handshake, it suddenly feels necessary.
It really does.
But I have to ask, does this language actually serve a real purpose, or is it just meant to torture us? Because some linguists call this tribal signaling, but isn't it often just pure laziness? Are we giving people too much credit by calling it some deep evolutionary behavior when they might just be blindly repeating the buzzwords their boss uses?
Well, mimicking the alpha of a group is, by definition, an evolutionary survival tactic.
Okay, fair point.
What's fascinating here is the concept of tribal linguistic signaling. It's deeply ingrained in us. Think about how a pack of animals operates. You demonstrate your value to the pack by showing you understand its specific calls and rhythms.
Like proving you belong.
Exactly. So when someone drops a phrase like leverage synergies, they aren't just communicating a business concept. They're subtly broadcasting a secondary message. They're saying, I understand the culture here. I belong in this room. I am a safe bet.
So you're flashing a cultural badge. You're proving you know the house rules.
Precisely. But the source material points out the massive structural flaw in this behavior.
Which is what?
Well, while it binds the established in-group together, it inherently alienates newcomers. If you transfer from a different industry, this wall of jargon just makes you feel entirely incompetent.
For sure. You feel like you're in a foreign country.
Right. And more dangerously for the business itself, this language frequently obfuscates a fundamental lack of substantive ideas. It provides cover.
Ah, right. The source gives a great example of this. Someone saying, we need a paradigm shift to disrupt the siloed infrastructure.
Yes, that one.
Now that sounds like a TED Talk. It sounds like they are about to unveil a technology that will alter the course of human history.
It sounds so important.
But we all know it usually just means I don't actually have a plan yet.
Or it means something incredibly mundane, like the marketing team and the sales team need to start replying to each other's emails.
Yeah, just talk to each other.
But if a manager just says that, it lacks the gravitas expected of executive-level strategy. So they take a simple, functional idea and wrap it in this thick layer of linguistic armor.
So the jargon acts as a shield.
Exactly. It protects the speaker from having to be totally substantive or vulnerable, while simultaneously proving they belong in the corporate ecosystem.
Okay, so spoken jargon protects us when we are face-to-face with the pack. But if the ultimate goal is self-preservation, what happens when we lose the safety net of our vocal tone, our hand gestures, and our facial expressions?
Oh, that brings us to the perilous, heavily coded world of asynchronous written communication.
The corporate email.
The corporate email. It is an entirely different behavioral landscape.
The materials focus heavily on this, and when we talk about asynchronous communication, we're talking about any medium where there is a time delay between sending and receiving. So emails, Slack, Teams, that sort of thing.
Right, where you can't see the person reacting.
Yeah. And because you strip away all the visual and auditory cues that human beings have relied on for millennia, the margin for misinterpretation just goes off the charts.
It really does. Without those physical cues to guide us, human beings default to text projection.
Text projection.
Yeah, we tend to project our own current insecurities or our own stress levels onto the text we are reading. Like if you are having a terrible morning, a totally neutral email from your boss reads like a threat.
Oh, absolutely. Can we chat later? Suddenly means you're fired.
Exactly. And because of this, corporate emails have evolved into a highly delicate diplomatic art form. We've developed these rigid, seemingly polite phrases that actually carry massive amounts of aggressive subtext.
The examples in the C2 guide are painfully accurate. Let's look at the absolute holy grail of professional exasperation, as per my previous email.
Oh, it is a fascinating piece of syntax.
If someone has never worked in a modern office, as per my previous email, sounds like a helpful, polite reference, like, oh, here's that file again.
Right, very helpful.
But anyone who has spent more than a week in a corporate environment knows the translation. It means, read the email I already sent you, you absolute fool.
It really is the ultimate expression of restrained rage. And, it functions as a paper trail. Another excellent example they highlight is, please advise.
See, please advise always sounds so humble to me. It sounds like a student seeking the wisdom of a seasoned mentor.
On the surface, yes, it's a humble request for guidance. But contextually, in the often cutthroat world of office politics, it is a tactical retreat.
Really?
Oh yeah, it almost always translates to, I am washing my hands of this impending disaster and the ball is entirely in your court.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Why do we do this? Like, why not just be direct? If a manager is frustrated that a coworker didn't read an attachment, or if someone wants to avoid taking the blame for a failing project, why don't they just state that directly in the email?
Because modern corporate structures heavily penalize direct conflict.
Okay, that makes sense.
In a modern hybrid paradigm, or a highly matrixed organization, you rely on dozens of people across different departments to get your job done. Your tone calibration has to be flawless.
Tone calibration, I like that.
Yeah. If you are too direct or terse, you risk coming off as abrasive. You get labeled as difficult to work with, which honestly can derail a career faster than incompetence.
Wow. So you have to put a shock absorber on your feedback so it doesn't rattle the engine?
Exactly.
But you can't just be overly nice either, right?
No, not at all. If you overcompensate for fear of being abrasive, you enter a totally different trap. If you become overly effusive, using too many exclamation points, softening your request too much, ignoring the urgency of a deadline, you risk sounding unprofessional or insincere.
Like you're a pushover.
Right. Your colleagues won't respect your boundaries. So it's an art form in diplomacy. You have to assert those boundaries while maintaining a flawless facade of cooperative professionalism.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. But that is why a phrase like, as per my previous email, is so brilliant. On paper, it is polite enough to protect the sender from an HR complaint, but it still delivers the necessary sting of accountability.
It's a masterclass in plausible deniability. But, okay, if text requires that much delicate shock absorption just to ask about a missed deadline, face-to-face conflict resolution has to be the ultimate test.
Oh, without a doubt.
How do you deliver genuinely bad news or harsh criticism without completely destroying the other person's morale?
This is where we separate the novices from the C2 level masters. The source material emphasizes that navigating these interpersonal dynamics requires an incredibly high degree of emotional intelligence, or EQ.
Being candid yet empathetic.
Precisely. You have to be completely candid about a performance failure while remaining highly empathetic to the human being sitting across the desk from you.
And the transcript gives a concrete strategy for this, right? Focusing on how we structure our sentences.
Yeah, they talk about depersonalizing the conflict by manipulating syntax.
Which sounds very academic.
It does, but practically, it just means leaning on the passive voice and abstract nouns. Let's examine their scenario. Imagine a manager dealing with an employee who is consistently missing crucial deadlines.
Okay.
A novice manager operating on frustration might sit that employee down and say, "You are always late with your reports, and it is unacceptable."
Which, to be fair, is factually accurate.
It is. But the moment those words leave the manager's mouth, the employee's brain perceives a physical threat. Cortisol floods their system.
Oh yeah, defenses go up instantly.
Exactly. They stop listening to the feedback and start mentally compiling a list of excuses to defend themselves. You have attacked their identity.
Right, because of the word you.
Exactly. Now contrast that with how a seasoned communicator handles the exact same failure. They alter the syntax. They say, "I've noticed a discrepancy between our agreed upon timelines and the recent deliverables. Let's explore what bottlenecks you're encountering and how we can streamline the process."
Okay, I hear that, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Part of me thinks that sounds incredibly detached. Like, it sounds like a robot trying to approximate human empathy. Wait, whatever happened to the classic management advice? The old feedback sandwich where you wedge a harsh critique between two genuine compliments to soften the blow, is that dead?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of workplace psychology, the feedback sandwich is entirely obsolete.
Really? Completely dead?
Completely.
Okay.
Modern professionals recognize the pattern immediately. When a manager starts a meeting with superficial praise, the employee's brain actually spikes in anxiety because they know the "but" is coming.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The compliment basically becomes a threat indicator.
Exactly. It breeds profound distrust. People see right through the superficial compliments.
So the discrepancy in bottleneck phrasing is actually better.
Yes. The linguistic strategy of using abstract nouns like a discrepancy, deliverables, bottlenecks is vastly superior because it shifts the geography of the problem.
The geography of the problem, what do you mean by that?
Well, by removing the word you stop pinning the failure to the employee's chest. Instead, you take the problem and put it on the desk between you. It becomes an objective third-party entity.
Oh, I see.
You're saying, there is a gap in our process. Let's look at this gap together and figure out how to close it. It mitigates defensiveness and clearly articulates the gap in performance.
You preserve their dignity while still demanding unequivocal improvement? I mean, that requires so much intentionality.
It is the pinnacle of diplomacy. It is candid, but structurally safe.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've explored how jargon operates as a tribal uniform to signal belonging. We've decoded how asynchronous emails function as tactical retreats. And we've seen how manipulating syntax can completely diffuse the tension in a difficult conversation.
Right.
But how do you actually apply this? How does a listener elevate their own language to that elite C2 level of mastery? Because stripping away the fluff and being unequivocal seems substantially harder than just hiding behind a bunch of buzzwords.
Oh, it is exponentially harder. Anyone can hide behind jargon. Speaking with unequivocal clarity takes courage, and it takes an understanding of the subtle mechanics of language.
The Pod Zone Guide points out that practical mastery often comes down to mastering collocations, right?
Yes. Collocations and idioms. Collocations are just specific pairings of words that sound natural together, and you also need to understand the psychological weight of certain idioms.
They gave some excellent examples of how subtle vocabulary shifts change the entire framing of a situation. Like in advanced corporate communication, you don't just have a conversation, you navigate it. You don't just show a problem, you articulate a gap.
Let's look at the mechanism behind the word navigate. If you tell your team, "I had a conversation with the client," you are framing yourself as a passive participant in an event.
Like it just happened to you.
Exactly. But if you say, "I navigated the conversation with the client," you are subconsciously framing yourself as a pilot. It implies that there were obstacles, turbulence, competing interests, and that your skill successfully guided the team to a destination.
Wow. You completely elevate the perception of your own competence just by swapping one verb.
It's powerful stuff.
They also mention key action verbs like calibrate, which implies a highly thoughtful, precise adjustment rather than just saying you're changing something.
Right, calibrate sounds much more intentional.
And the word obfuscate, which gives you the vocabulary to call out when someone else is trying to hide the truth under a mountain of buzzwords.
Exactly.
But how do you practice this without sounding utterly robotic? I mean, if I walk into the office tomorrow and start talking about articulating gaps and calibrating bottlenecks, my colleagues are going to think I've lost touch with reality.
This raises an important question about the true nature of fluency. True mastery is not just memorizing a list of C2 vocabulary words and deploying them relentlessly.
Thank goodness.
Mastery is entirely about situational awareness. It is knowing exactly when to play devil's advocate to stimulate debate. It is knowing when to use that tribal signaling to comfort a nervous client and prove you understand their industry. And crucially, it is knowing when to strip all the armor away and be completely, devastatingly unequivocal.
So it's a dynamic toolkit. You don't use a highly calibrated torque wrench when you just need to hammer in a nail.
Exactly. You have to read the room and tailor your rhetorical strategy to the specific psychology of the human being sitting in front of you. If you are dealing with a highly defensive employee, you lean on the passive voice and abstract nouns to depersonalize the issue.
Put the problem on the desk.
Right. But if you are analyzing a confusing strategy document, you strip away the jargon to locate the actual functional meaning. Flexibility is the ultimate marker of a master communicator.
To summarize our deep dive today, the language of the modern office is far more than just a collection of annoying buzzwords. Corporate jargon is a tribal uniform. Those seemingly polite, asynchronous emails are minefields of subtext designed to protect us. And delivering effective feedback requires the delicate art of depersonalizing conflict.
It is a highly complex, slightly absurd, but deeply fascinating ecosystem to navigate.
It really is. And for you listening, whether you are preparing for a cross-functional alignment meeting this afternoon, or you are just trying to politely tell a coworker to read a previous email, mastering these nuances is the shortcut to true professional efficiency.
It gives you so much more control.
It does. When you understand the machinery of the language, you can control the outcome of the room.
I will leave you with one final, perhaps slightly unsettling thought to consider, though.
Oh, lay it on us.
We've established that asynchronous communication strips away human elements like tone and body language, and it forces us to rely on these rigid, perfectly calibrated linguistic formulas just to avoid being perceived as abrasive.
Right, like, please advise.
Yeah. Well, if the ultimate goal of corporate writing is to produce perfectly emotionless, structurally flawless diplomacy that avoids all friction, will AI eventually become fundamentally better at writing these perfect corporate emails than human beings?
Oh, wow.
Are we heading toward a future where our inboxes are just machines, flawlessly and politely advising other machines while the humans sit back and watch?
A completely frictionless corporate loop, just two AIs leveraging synergies and running things up flagpoles until the end of time.
It's entirely possible.
Think about that the next time you are sitting in a meeting room wondering if anyone is actually speaking English. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
So you're sitting in a boardroom, and the air conditioning is, just a little too cold.
Oh, it always is.
Right, always freezing. And you've got your coffee right in front of you, and you've just pitched this brilliant idea for the upcoming quarter.
An idea you spent, the last 3 weeks agonizing over?
Exactly, like refining every single detail. So you finish speaking, and there's just this beat of silence.
Oh, crickets.
Yeah, maybe a couple of polite nods, or like a non-committal hum from the end of the table. And then the conversation just kind of drifts away.
It just completely evaporates.
It evaporates. But then, say, 10 minutes later, a colleague sitting across from you clears his throat. Let's call him David.
Okay, David.
So David leans forward, he steeples his fingers, and he casually repeats your exact idea.
Oh, the worst.
He changes maybe 2 adjectives, says it just slightly louder, and suddenly the room erupts.
The boss is absolutely thrilled.
People are writing things down, and David is just absorbing all these accolades for your intellectual property right in front of your eyes.
And your heart rate immediately shoots up to 140 beats per minute.
Your blood is absolutely boiling.
Yeah.
Because the immediate, visceral, biological reaction in that moment is to snap, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You want to slam your palm flat on the mahogany table and shout, that is literally what I just said 10 minutes ago. You stole my idea.
But if you do that, you lose.
Right. And if you stay silent and just seethe in your chair, you also lose.
You really do. Your reputation, your intellectual property, your standing in the office, it is all suddenly on the line.
And it's all dependent on the precise words you choose to let out of your mouth in the next 5 seconds.
It is the ultimate high wire act. And I think it highlights a fundamental truth about professional life that we really rarely acknowledge.
Which is what?
That the language of the modern corporate world is not just a method of exchanging information. It is a highly specialized arena of, diplomacy, warfare, and survival.
Which is exactly what we are dissecting today. We're going on a deep dive into this high-stakes, hyper-nuanced world of advanced corporate communication.
It's going to be a fun one.
It really is. And we are pulling from this incredible masterclass guide focused specifically on C2 level English. Specifically in corporate environments.
Right. And for anyone who might be unfamiliar with that grading scale of language proficiency, C2 is essentially the summit.
It implies absolute mastery.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolute mastery. But when we look at these sources, it becomes glaringly obvious that operating at a C2 level in a corporate setting actually has very little to do with having a massive vocabulary.
Or knowing how to use a semicolon perfectly.
Not at all. I mean, if you are sitting in a language laboratory, memorizing verb conjugations and taking multiple choice grammar tests.
Which is how most people learn, right?
Yeah, but you are entirely shielded from the reality of how language actually operates in the wild.
In the laboratory, there's a clear right and wrong.
But in the boardroom, the textbook is completely thrown out the window. Mastery at this executive level is about psychology.
It's about understanding how words can be weaponized.
Yes, how they can be softened to mask an attack, and how they're strategically deployed to navigate a landscape full of hidden traps.
So our mission today is to break down this matrix for you. We want to give you the linguistic tools to actually decode what is happening underneath the surface of office politics.
To figure out how to handle the Davids of the world.
Exactly. How to navigate cross-cultural landmines without blowing up a multinational deal, and how to parse through the dense, sometimes really suffocating fog of corporate jargon without losing your sanity.
Or your job, honestly.
Or your job. And I promise, by the end of this deep dive, you will never look at a mandatory all-hands meeting, or even a simple 2-line email from your boss the exact same way again.
Once you learn to recognize the underlying mechanics of corporate speak, all those invisible power dynamics become entirely visible.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get to the boardroom theatrics and dealing with our friend David, we have to start with something much more immediate.
The daily grind.
Right. Before you worry about what the CEO is saying on an earnings call or what your peers are doing, you have to survive the most omnipresent hurdle in any professional's life.
Your direct manager.
Yes, your boss. The sources spend a significant amount of time breaking down this concept of managing upwards.
It's such a vital concept. Managing upwards, essentially, is the delicate, ongoing process of guiding, influencing, and crucially, pushing back against the people who hold structural power over you.
But without ever crossing the line into insubordination.
Exactly, which is the hard part.
Which feels like a paradox, doesn't it? Saying no to the person who literally decides your salary and your employment status feels inherently dangerous.
It is dangerous if you do it wrong.
When I was reading through this section of the source material, this specific analogy kept coming to my mind. Imagine you're a line cook in a ridiculously busy, high-end restaurant on a Friday night.
Oh, stressful already.
Right. The dining room is packed to capacity. The ticket machine is just spitting out orders relentlessly, just a nonstop stream of paper.
You are up to your neck in grease.
Tending to 4 pans at once, timing everything to the second, and right in the middle of this absolute chaos, the head chef storms over to your station.
And yells out a highly complex off-menu order.
Yes, an off-menu order that he demands you fire right this exact second.
The pressure in that scenario is immense because the hierarchy is absolute. I mean, the chef is God in that kitchen.
Exactly. And as the line cook, you're trapped. You can't just freeze, drop your tongs, throw your hands in the air and scream, "I can't do this."
I'm too busy. Look at all these tickets.
All right, if you do that, you sound rigid, you sound panicked, you look completely incompetent and uncooperative.
You're not a team player.
But on the flip side, if you just blindly say, "Yes, chef," you're going to burn the 4 dishes you are currently cooking.
And you are going to completely butcher the new off-menu order because you just don't have the capacity for it.
You fail at everything by trying to do everything. So the question is, how do you actually refuse the work without sounding like you are refusing the work?
This is where we get into the psychology of what the guide calls the collaborative pushback.
The collaborative pushback.
A true master of this environment, someone operating with C2 level strategic fluency, they completely eliminate the word no from their vocabulary in these situations.
Wow. Completely eliminate it.
Completely. The word no functions as a brick wall. And when you put up a wall, the immediate instinct of a manager is to try and knock it down.
It creates an adversarial dynamic right off the bat.
Exactly. So instead of building a wall, the strategic communicator presents trade-offs.
Presenting trade-offs.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to look at the exact phrase the source material suggests for this scenario because it is incredibly dense.
It's a masterpiece of phrasing.
It really is. So let's say your manager drops a massive, unexpected project on your desk at like 4 p.m. on a Thursday.
The classic late-in-the-day ambush.
Yes. Here is the suggested response from the guide. Quote, I would love to spearhead this initiative. However, to ensure it receives the granular attention it warrants, we need to look at my current bandwidth. Given that I'm fully allocated to Project X, how would you like me to prioritize this new directive against our existing deadlines? End quote.
I mean, it is a phenomenal piece of linguistic engineering. Every single word in that response has a specific psychological job to do.
Let's break it down forensically then, because at first glance, to someone not versed in this, it might just sound like annoying corporate buzzword soup.
It does sound a bit heavy if you don't know the mechanics.
So it starts with, I would love to spearhead this initiative.
That opening move is crucial. You are immediately preempting any accusation that you are lazy or unmotivated or not a team player.
You are explicitly expressing enthusiasm.
But notice the specific verb they use. Spearhead. You don't just say you want to do the project or work on it.
Right, spearhead is strong.
To spearhead something is literally military terminology. It means to lead an attack, to be at the absolute front and a forward-moving force.
So you're projecting alpha energy right out of the gate.
Exactly. It signals extreme ambition and leadership.
You're essentially saying, I am a leader. It completely neutralizes the fact that you are literally about to push back.
They're padding the blow.
And then the pivot comes in. They say, however, to ensure it receives the granular attention it warrants. I really want to focus on the word granular there. Why use that instead of just saying, close attention?
Granular implies a microscopic, exhaustive level of detail. It suggests getting down to the individual grains of sand.
Oh, that's a great way to picture it.
By saying this new initiative warrants or deserves this granular attention, you are doing two things simultaneously. First, you are deeply flattering the manager.
Right. You are telling them this idea you just gave me is of such high caliber that it demands absolute perfection.
Precisely. And second, you are implicitly stating, because it demands perfection, I cannot give it a right, half-hearted attempt.
It's setting an incredibly high standard for the work, which honestly makes it impossible for the manager to say, well, just do it quickly and poorly.
You've trapped them with their own importance.
That is so manipulative, but brilliant. And that leads to the next clause. We need to look at my current bandwidth. Given that I'm fully allocated to Project X, this phrasing really fascinates me.
Because it's so detached.
Yes, we aren't saying, I have no time or I am too busy. We are using words like bandwidth and allocated. These are technical terms, like computer science and economic terms.
Exactly. You are actively removing the emotion and the human frailty from the equation. I am too busy sounds like a personal failing.
It sounds like you are overwhelmed and struggling to cope.
But my current bandwidth sounds like a systemic, objective reality. A server only has so much bandwidth. It's not the server's fault, it's just a law of physics.
So by saying you are fully allocated, you are speaking the language of resource management.
You are framing your time not as a personal schedule, but as a corporate asset that has already been deployed elsewhere.
Which perfectly sets up the killing stroke. The final sentence. How would you like me to prioritize this new directive against our existing deadlines?
This is the absolute magic trick of the whole sequence.
You take the panic of the line, I have too much to do, and you elegantly formalize it. But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Go for it.
What if you have a manager who is just, toxic or totally oblivious? You ask them how to prioritize, and they just look at you and say, they are both priority number one. Figure it out, get them both done.
The do-both manager.
Right. Doesn't this whole collaborative pushback just fall apart if the manager refuses to play ball?
It's a very valid concern, and it absolutely happens. But the beauty of this phrasing is that it forces the issue into the open, often in writing if you do it over email.
Okay.
If a manager says, do both, a C2 level communicator doesn't panic. They follow up by forcing accountability.
How so?
They might reply, "Understood. I will run both concurrently." Given that running both splits the bandwidth, we should expect a delay of 5 days on Project X or a 20% reduction in the scope of the new directive. Which of those two outcomes is preferable to you?
Ah, wow. So you just keep relentlessly presenting the physics of the situation.
You refuse to let them live in a fantasy world where time is infinite.
You're boxing them in with logic.
Precisely. The core mechanism here is transferring the burden of the dilemma back up the chain of command. A manager's literal job description is to manage resources.
And your time is a resource.
Right. By asking them to rank the importance of their own requests, you are forcing them to actually do their job. You are managing their expectations of you.
You never once refused the work.
Never. You simply made them realize that inserting this new task requires sacrificing an old task.
It's basically psychological Aikido. You are taking the manager's own momentum, their urgent desire to get this new project completed, and using it to protect your own boundaries.
You remain entirely collaborative, highly professional, and yet you've built an ironclad fence around your workload.
But as we see when we move further into the sources, managing upwards is really only half the battle. Protecting your time is one thing, protecting your reputation is entirely different.
Because the real crucible of corporate life isn't necessarily the one-on-one with your boss.
It's the conference room.
The boardroom is the true arena. That is where power dynamics are tested, where visibility is achieved, and where reputations are either forged or permanently fractured among your peers.
Which brings us back to our friend David from the introduction.
Ah, yes, David, the idea hijacker.
We left that scenario hanging. So David has just regurgitated your brilliant idea, the room loves it, and your instinct is to go nuclear.
Which is the worst possible move.
We know from the source material that reacting emotionally is a disaster. But I want to really dig into why. Because, frankly, the idea of just sitting there and letting David get away with it feels deeply wrong to me.
It feels like a massive injustice.
Doesn't letting it slide make you look incredibly weak? If we don't aggressively call out the theft right then and there, aren't we basically hanging a sign on our backs that says, "Please steal my intellectual property, I won't fight back"?
It's the natural defensive reaction. But if we analyze the conference room through the lens of advanced corporate diplomacy, we have to recognize what the room actually values.
And what does the room value?
The room, as a collective entity, values emotional control, stability, and forward momentum above almost everything else.
Stability over justice, essentially.
Exactly. The source material makes a critical observation here. Reacting emotionally, snapping, pointing fingers, raising your voice to claim credit, always, inevitably, comes across as defensive. And worse, it comes across as petulant.
Petulant, such an evocative word.
It makes you sound like a child in a sandbox crying because someone took your plastic shovel.
Wow. Yeah. Even if it's your shovel.
Even if it's your shovel. And here's the harsh reality of corporate psychology. Even if you are 100% right, even if David blatantly word for word stole your idea, the room will not remember David's theft.
Wait, really? They won't care?
They won't remember it. What the room will remember is that you lost your temper. They will remember that you disrupted the professional harmony of the meeting.
So you suddenly become the product.
You become the volatile element. And David, simply by sitting there quietly while you yell, suddenly looks like the reasonable, mature professional.
That is so frustrating, but it makes total sense. So you cannot use the iron fist. You cannot attack directly.
No, you have to use what the guide refers to as the velvet glove approach.
The velvet glove. I love that imagery.
Yeah.
A heavy, firm impact, completely muffled by soft fabric.
It's extreme diplomacy masking a ruthless intent.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How do we actually execute this? How do we take our idea back from David, establish dominance, and do it all while sounding completely polite?
The strategy relies on using highly inclusive, collaborative language to subtly but undeniably reassert your ownership.
Show me how.
The source provides a brilliant template for this exact moment. The second David finishes receiving his praise, you don't scowl. You smile warmly, you lean in, and you interject smoothly with this phrase.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm thrilled that you resonate with the framework I outlined earlier, David. To build on my initial proposition, we could also incorporate.
Oh, that is lethal.
Isn't it?
It is so smooth, it almost hurts to hear it. I'm thrilled that you resonate with the framework I outlined earlier. We need to dissect this, because the level of condescension wrapped in politeness is staggering.
Notice the architecture of what you've just done. You have completely neutralized his theft by reframing his hijacking as nothing more than a supportive endorsement of your original thought.
You're basically patting him on the head.
You really are.
You are looking at a grown man in a business suit and essentially saying, "Good boy, David. I'm so glad you liked my idea enough to repeat it for everyone."
But you are doing it with such elevated, sanitized language that he cannot possibly take offense without looking unhinged.
The word resonate is doing incredible work there.
It is, because you aren't accusing him of stealing. You are merely suggesting that his intellect vibrated at the exact same frequency as your genius.
Oh man, it's an act of linguistic generosity that actually strips him of power.
And then the critical anchor of the whole phrase, the framework I outlined earlier.
Right. You are establishing the timeline for the entire room. You are correcting the historical record in real time, but you aren't pointing a finger and saying, "You stole it."
You are stating it as an objective fact. You are saying, I built the framework, David just likes it.
And the genius is that David is entirely trapped. Like, what is he going to do? Is he going to stop the meeting and say, "Actually, no, I didn't resonate with your framework. It was my original idea"?
If he does that, he looks unbelievably petty and combative.
You have graciously allowed him to agree with you, and he has absolutely no choice but to accept the submission.
It is a beautifully subtle power play. It's checkmate in one move. And notice the immediate pivot that follows that.
To build on my initial proposition, we could also incorporate.
Yes. You don't just linger in the past to claim credit and pout. You immediately seize the future of the idea.
Because if you just save your idea and stop talking, it still feels a little defensive.
Exactly. By pivoting to the next step, you are demonstrating to the room that because it is your intellectual property, you are the only one uniquely qualified to actually expand upon it.
David could only parrot the idea. You can advance it.
You instantly regain control of the floor, you demonstrate leadership, you showcase massive emotional intelligence, and you establish absolute linguistic dominance.
All without ever raising your voice above a conversational murmur. It is a masterclass in self-defense.
It really is.
But this leads us to a really fascinating complication in the source material. We've established how to handle these power dynamics, the collaborative pushback, the velvet glove, when everyone in the room is playing by the same cultural rules.
Which is a massive assumption in today's world.
Exactly. In today's hyper-globalized, interconnected economy, communication isn't just about dealing with the hierarchy of your boss or the ego of your peers. It is heavily dictated by geography.
This is where the matrix becomes incredibly complex.
Because a velvet glove approach that works flawlessly and subtly in a boardroom in Manhattan might completely catastrophically fail in a boardroom in Tokyo.
Or even in London.
Right. The sources break this down into a framework of high context versus low context cultures. And I found this section incredibly illuminating because it suddenly explains so much of the bizarre friction I think anyone who's ever worked on an international team has experienced.
Oh, without a doubt.
Can we really unpack the difference between these two communicative worlds?
Absolutely. It's a foundational concept in international business. Let's start with low context cultures. The primary examples the guide uses are the United States and Germany.
Okay, US and Germany.
In a low context culture, communication is highly explicit, direct, and unambiguous. The burden of understanding is entirely on the speaker. The ethos is say what you mean and mean exactly what you say.
So if a German colleague thinks your quarterly strategy is flawed, they aren't going to dance around it. They'll say your strategy is flawed because of data points A, B, and C.
Correct. It is incredibly efficient. It is entirely focused on the rapid, accurate transfer of raw information. There is very little hidden meaning for you to decipher.
Right. The words mean what they mean in the dictionary.
Now, conversely, you have high context cultures. The guide highlights Japan, China, and in a very specific, nuanced way, the United Kingdom.
UK, yeah.
In these cultures, communication relies heavily on the implicit. The meaning of a statement is not just located in the dictionary definition of the words used.
Where is it located then?
The true meaning is deeply embedded in the context of the situation, the hierarchical relationship between the speakers, minute nonverbal cues, and most importantly, what is intentionally left unsaid.
The analogy that immediately popped into my head when I was trying to wrap my mind around this is that it's like putting two absolute grandmasters at a table to play a game.
Okay, I like this.
But one player is convinced they are playing poker, and the other player is convinced they are playing chess.
Oh, that's perfect.
The poker player, representing the high-context communicator, is constantly bluffing, hiding their cards, communicating through subtle tells, a raised eyebrow, a deliberate pause before speaking. The entire game is about reading what you can't see.
Right.
But the chess player, the low-context communicator from the US or Germany, thinks everything is entirely visible on the board. All the pieces are right there in the open, bathed in light. There's absolutely no hidden information.
That is a phenomenal visualization of the disconnect.
And so you have the chess player looking at the poker player, getting increasingly frustrated, thinking, why are you being so evasive and confusing? Just make a move.
Just say what you mean.
Yeah. And the poker player is looking at the chess player, absolutely horrified, thinking, why are you being so horribly rude, aggressive, and simplistic?
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that friction doesn't just cause mild interpersonal annoyance. As the source material heavily emphasizes, it leads to multi-million-dollar misunderstandings. It completely derails negotiations.
Let's ground this in some reality, because the abstract theory makes sense, but I want to see how this actually blows up a meeting in practice.
The guide has some great examples.
It really does. It gives some incredibly specific examples of the friction between British understatement and American directness. This is a fascinating pairing because nominally they're speaking the exact same language.
They share a vocabulary, but they possess entirely different operating systems for that vocabulary.
So true. Let's look at the exact scenario the source provides. Imagine an eager American executive has just flown into London. They stand up in a boardroom and pitch a radical, high-risk, high-reward marketing strategy to their British counterparts.
Very typical scenario.
The American finishes the pitch, highly caffeinated, expecting explicit, direct feedback. The senior British colleague pauses, offers a tight, polite smile, and says, quote, well, that's a rather brave approach, end quote.
A rather brave approach.
Okay, if I am that American, playing my low-context game of chess, I hear the word brave and my chest instantly puffs out.
You feel like a hero.
Brave. That means I am a visionary. I am taking risks. I am an innovator pushing the envelope. I am basically the Steve Jobs of this marketing firm. I take that statement as a massive, validating compliment.
Because you are taking the literal dictionary definition of the word brave and applying it directly to your business strategy.
Exactly. But what does it actually mean?
The high context reality, the British reality, is diametrically opposed. To understand it, you have to understand the cultural context. A society that historically values politeness, saving face, and avoiding overt emotional conflict.
So they won't just say, this is bad.
Right. In the context of British corporate understatement, looking a colleague in the eye and calling their idea brave translates roughly to curse bellis. That is an utterly catastrophic idea. It will ruin the company. It defies all logic, and you are a complete, unmitigated fool for suggesting it out loud in this room.
That is a staggering, almost terrifying disconnect.
It is a chasm.
The American leaves the room thinking they are on the fast track to a promotion and planning their victory dinner. And the British executive leaves the room thinking they need to immediately contact HR to have the American fired for gross incompetence.
And neither of them realizes, even for a second, that they have completely misunderstood each other. It's a literal translation error occurring between two people speaking English.
The guide offers another, arguably more dangerous example. Let's say you are in a tense, protracted negotiation over a contract. The American is pushing hard for a specific concession.
Right.
The British counterpart listens, nods slightly, and says, I hear what you say.
I hear what you say.
See, again, to a low-context ear, I hear what you say means exactly that. It means I am actively listening to you. I comprehend your points. I am taking them into consideration. We are tracking together.
It feels like a moment of tacit agreement, or at least positive momentum.
Yeah, it feels like an invitation to keep going.
But the implicit meaning, embedded deep in the high-context cultural code, is a brick wall. When a British professional in a negotiation says, I hear what you say, what they actually mean is, I completely disagree with every single syllable you just uttered. Your argument is fundamentally invalid. I have no intention of conceding this point, and I am shutting down this line of inquiry permanently.
Wow. I hear what you say actually means I'm actively ignoring what you say.
Essentially, yes.
So if the American keeps pushing after that, thinking the door is still open, they're just having a healthy debate, they are going to come across as aggressively obtuse.
Exactly. They are violating a boundary they don't even know exists.
So if you are sitting at home or driving to work listening to this, the realization here is profound. It means that simply memorizing standard grammar and having a massive vocabulary is completely insufficient for survival.
It's not enough.
If you want to operate at a C2 level in a globalized environment, You have to realize that mastering cultural colloquialisms, euphemisms, and understatements is just as vital as knowing where to put a comma. You have to learn the cultural code.
You can't just read the dictionary, you have to read the room's history.
You have to transition from being a linguist to being an anthropologist.
That's a great way to put it. You must understand the cultural values that shape the language. You have to understand why the British desire to save face and avoid direct conflict created the mechanism of understatement in the first place in order to actually decode the words being spoken to you.
Which provides an incredible, almost chilling transition into the final major section of our source material.
The dark arts.
Because up to this point, we've been talking about how euphemisms and understatements are used out of cultural politeness. The British say brave because they don't want the awkwardness of saying stupid. It's a desire to maintain social harmony.
It's offensive.
But what happens when that exact same linguistic mechanism, the ability to hide reality behind soft words, is weaponized on a massive scale? What happens when a multi-billion-dollar corporation uses highly orchestrated, deeply euphemistic language, not to be polite, but to actively obscure failure, hide the truth, and evade accountability?
Now we are entering the realm of crisis communication. This is what the sources vividly describe as semantic gymnastics and the dark art of corporate doublespeak.
Semantic gymnastics. It's the perfect phrase. It implies bending, twisting, contorting, and flipping words mid-air until they land in a shape that completely obscures their original meaning.
They completely alter reality.
The source material dives deep into how this manifests when a company faces severe financial headwinds. When the stock is dropping, when a product fails, when things go fundamentally wrong, the language used by the C-suite undergoes a radical metamorphosis.
Standard, concrete English is entirely abandoned. It is replaced overnight by highly sanitized, aggressively abstract terminology.
And what's the goal?
The purpose of this language is ruthlessly specific. It is engineered to mitigate public fallout, protect the brand's valuation, and pacify panicked shareholders.
So what does this all mean in practice? The most brutal, ubiquitous application of this that the source dissects is the reality of mass layoffs.
Yes, layoffs are the ultimate test of doublespeak.
Let's just be completely real for a second. A CEO is never, ever going to stand up at a press podium, look into the cameras and say, I mismanaged our operational budget, I completely misread the market, I overhired by 20%, and now, to save my own end-of-year bonus and our stock price, I am firing 500 hardworking people today.
It will never happen.
They will never speak plainly. And a large part of that, as the guide points out, is driven by legal and financial precarity. Concrete words create direct legal liability.
Admitting fault invites massive lawsuits. So they retreat into the abstract.
But that retreat into abstraction creates a massive problem for the employees and the public. How do you decipher a message that has been intentionally designed by teams of lawyers and PR experts to be impenetrable?
You have to learn to decode the doublespeak.
Let's look at the exact translation the source provides. Because instead of saying, we are firing 500 people, the official corporate press release will say something like, quote, to optimize our organizational agility and streamline our operational footprint, we are initiating a strategic workforce reduction.
Wow, it sounds like they are doing routine maintenance on a server rack, not destroying 500 human livelihoods.
It really does. Let's really pull this sentence apart because the semantic gymnastics here are Olympic level. To optimize our organizational agility.
It completely reframes the mass firing. It isn't a failure of fast management. It's framed as a proactive, highly athletic, positive move for the future.
Right. We aren't failing and bleeding cash. We're just becoming agile.
And look at the phrase, streamline our operational footprint. A footprint is just a temporary impression left on the ground. It is entirely abstract and lifeless.
It fundamentally removes the human beings from the equation.
Completely. You aren't cutting jobs. You aren't removing incomes that pay for mortgages and groceries. You are merely streamlining a footprint. It is language explicitly designed to anesthetize the listener.
But the absolute pinnacle of this dark art, the term the guide highlights as arguably the most brilliantly sinister invention of modern corporate PR, is the word right-sizing.
Right-sizing is a masterpiece of psychological manipulation.
That word makes my skin crawl. It really does. Because if a company says they are downsizing, even though that's still a euphemism, it still clearly indicates a loss.
Down implies shrinkage, weakness, a reduction in power.
But right-sizing, it completely flips the narrative. It implies that the previous size of the company was inherently morally wrong. It was an error in the system.
Exactly.
And therefore, the mass layoff of thousands of people is simply a natural, almost mathematical correction to return the universe to its proper right state.
That is the exact psychological trick at play. By framing a devastating layoff as a mathematical correction to the right size, it strips the emotion out entirely.
It completely obfuscates the human toll.
Because psychologically, you cannot be angry at math. You cannot protest an equation balancing itself. The language is sanitized to the point of being entirely sterile.
The sources also delve into how this doublespeak applies to product failures, which provides a bit of dark comedy amid the grimness of layoffs.
The tech industry is famous for this.
Oh, absolutely. Let's say a major tech company spends 4 years and $200 million launching a revolutionary new smart fridge, and it completely flocks.
Yeah.
The software crashes, nobody buys it, it's a total laughingstock.
They don't issue a press release saying, "We failed. The product was terrible and nobody wanted it."
What do they say?
According to the corporate lexicon in the guide, the standard pivot is, quote, "We experienced suboptimal market penetration and are now pivoting our strategic roadmap."
Suboptimal market penetration. It literally sounds like a gastrointestinal medical diagnosis.
It's so clinical.
It completely avoids the visceral reality that consumers hated the product. And then, you get to the legendary buzzword, pivoting.
Pivoting.
The authors of the source material actually make a pretty funny observation about this. They joke that if they had $1 for every Silicon Valley tech startup that claimed they were pivoting, instead of admitting absolute catastrophic defeat, they would be retired on a private island right now.
It's a humorous aside, but it points to a very profound observation about how language shapes perception. Think about the physical action of pivoting.
Like in sports.
Yeah, in basketball or in dance, a pivot is a graceful, highly intentional change of direction while keeping one foot firmly planted. It implies total control.
It implies we meant to do this. We learned something valuable, and we are simply turning on our heel to apply it.
It entirely hides the messy reality, which is almost always a panicked, desperate scramble to survive because the original business model was a fiery disaster.
So, bringing this all back to the core mission of our deep dive today, why is this masterclass in corporate doublespeak included in a guide designed to teach C2 English?
Because, as the experts emphasize, to truly operate at an executive level, to survive the alligator pit, you must be bilingual.
You must speak standard, clear, grammatically flawless English to communicate effectively. But you must also be completely fluent in corporate.
Yes. You have to be able to look at a dense 4-page corporate press release, parse your way through the thick smokescreen of jargon, euphemisms, and semantic gymnastics, and extract the cold, empirical truth hidden beneath the rhetoric.
You need to instantly recognize that strategic workforce reduction means pack up your desk, and suboptimal penetration means the product is dead on arrival.
It is ultimately about self-defense. If you cannot decode this language, you will inevitably be manipulated by it.
But if you master it, you gain agency. You know exactly when to deploy a euphemism yourself to save face in a difficult client meeting.
And much more importantly, you know exactly how to cut through the noise and demand accountability from leadership when they are trying to hide behind a wall of abstract jargon.
It really is a survival toolkit. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today on this journey through the hidden matrix of corporate communication.
We really have.
We started at the micro level, looking at how to protect your own daily time and bandwidth by utilizing the collaborative pushback.
Learning how to say no without saying no by presenting trade-offs and forcing your managers to actually prioritize their demands.
We then scaled up into the boardroom battlefield, exploring the intense psychology of idea hijackers. We learned how to combat the Davids of the world using the velvet glove approach.
Reclaiming your intellectual property with hyper-inclusive language that neutralizes the theft, corrects the historical record, and asserts your dominance without ever resorting to petulance.
From there, we expanded globally, navigating the incredibly delicate geographic minefield of high-context versus low-context cultures.
We saw how a poker player and a chess player fundamentally misunderstand each other.
And how understanding the unsaid, implicit meaning, like the deadly British understatement of a brave approach, is absolutely critical to avoid catastrophic miscommunications.
And finally, we decoded the dark arts of corporate crisis communication, analyzing the semantic gymnastics of terms like right-sizing and pivoting, empowering you to parse the rhetoric and extract the empirical truth when companies attempt to obscure reality.
The ultimate realization here is that the words and phrases we've dissected today, spearhead, bandwidth, granular, right-sizing, these aren't just vocabulary words to memorize for a proficiency test.
They are strategic tools.
They are weapons and shields. You can now actively use them to protect your workload, defend your ideas, and demand transparency. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to ponder on your own.
Oh, I'm curious.
It builds on this entire idea of corporate crisis communication and the evolution of language. We've seen how corporate PR is constantly inventing new words to soften bad news. They invent terms like right-sizing to build a wall between the action of firing someone and the painful reality of losing a job.
They create a linguistic buffer to protect themselves.
Exactly. But here is the question. Language is living, and people adapt. What happens when these euphemisms become so widely used and so deeply understood by the general public that they completely lose their sanitized effect?
That's a great point.
When the average worker knows exactly what right-sizing means, the word becomes just as painful, just as loaded, and just as terrifying as the word fired. So what happens to corporate communication then?
It presents a fascinating dilemma regarding the inevitable treadmill of language and PR.
Will corporations eventually run out of words to hide behind, forcing them into an era of ultimate brutal transparency? Or will the semantic gymnastics simply evolve into something even more abstract, even more removed from human experience, until corporate communication becomes entirely incomprehensible to anyone outside the C-suite?
That is a terrifying thought.
It really is. It makes you wonder what the corporate buzzwords of 2050 are going to sound like. Because, as we established at the very beginning, when you step out of the safe, controlled language laboratory and step onto that high-wire act over the alligator pit, it's not the grammar that keeps you alive. It's knowing exactly how to talk to the alligators.